Hey, hello everybody. Very pleased, very happy to be with you today. I have 15 minutes, so I will go and speak about the big challenges that we have in our country right now. And that's why I want to talk and to discuss today the state of our federation. You may know it. There are structural problems with the way our federation is being governed, with our institutions, and with democracy itself. Our federation is broken. Our institutions are failing. Our democracy is in trouble. If we don't address these problems, things will continue to get worse. There has been a perversion of the meaning of democracy itself. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Democrats fought for the equality of all citizens under the law and their right to govern themselves against the despotic power of kings and small cliques of aristocrats. They adopted constitutions that outline the power of governments and protect our rights and our freedoms from the state. But governments were not supposed to decide everything. Citizens could govern themselves within a free society and a free economy. Governments set basic rules, and civil society could function autonomously within this framework. And if you read the speeches of that time, you clearly see that they feared democracy could become a tyranny of the majority. Unfortunately, they were right, but it's worse. Today, it is a tyranny of a large enough minority, a minority that controls the levels of power. Governments use sophisticated propaganda and media manipulation to shape what people believe. Once they have manufactured that consent, they can take any action and claim it is the will of the people, protecting themselves from any accountability. So, today, democracy has become a government's ability to act with impunity once it has manipulated the public opinion. Just remember, look at Ottawa. Justin Trudeau acted like a dictator, even without a majority government. So, if a party of a government supports a policy that is approved by enough people to get elected or re-elected, that is considered democratic, even if it violates the Constitution, the formal equality of all citizens before the law, and our fundamental rights and freedom. That's why governments have huge communications budget, or we should say propaganda budgets, in order to manipulate public opinion and manufacture the minimal democratic legitimacy that they need. In a federation, like our federation here in Canada, the growth of government means the growth of all levels of government, and that is our situation today. Provincial governments are bigger and more interventionist than ever. And Ottawa is not becoming bigger and more interventionist. It is also increasing its power with more centralization, regardless of what our Constitution says. But we may remember the objective of the 1867 Constitutional Act was not to subordinate provincial governments to a central authority, but rather to have sovereign provinces within the limits of their powers, dealing with local matters that directly affected their citizens. And a sovereign federal government within the limits of its own power, dealing with matters of general national interest. But we know what happened. We have a government that is not respecting our Constitution, and Ottawa took on more responsibilities through the 20th century. The centralizing trend accelerated under Pierre Elliott Trudeau. The 1970s and the 1980s were the era of big government, big deficit, growing debt. The era of increased federal intervention in healthcare and education. The era of the National Energy Program. The era of centralization and nationalization. This created resentment. It fueled separatism in Quebec and alienation in Alberta. The Parti québécois became Quebec's official opposition in 1970, formed the government in 1976, and held its first referendum on secession in 1980. Albertans first elected a separatist in a provincial election in 1982. In a diverse federation like Canada, a big central government interfering in provincial affairs, favoring the interests of some regions against those of others, and redistributing wealth unfairly is a recipe for disunity. What we have in Ottawa, it is not a federal government. It is an imperial government. We don't have true federalism anymore. We have, with clear division of powers, we have imperial federalism. So you may understand that we have several problems to solve. A federal government that centralizes power, and a democracy that degenerates into the tyranny of the majority or a large controlling minority. I know what many of you are thinking. The tyrannical majority or controlling minority is the large population centers of Quebec and Ontario. The Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto axis is big enough to elect and control federal governments. That's the so-called Laurentian elite. Because our population is unevenly distributed across the country and concentrated in this area, a federal government mostly needs to appeal to the voters there and ignore the other regions of the country where it has few seats to win, like here in Alberta. I think that's a good description of the Liberal Party and Conservative Party strategy. So, what is the solution? The solution is to radically downsize Ottawa, most of what's wrong in this country originates from Ottawa. We are a huge country with diverse regional cultures. The culture in Quebec is very different than the culture here in Alberta. Instead of having one-size-fits-all policies imposed by Ottawa, we should have autonomous provincial governments that answer the needs and wishes of their citizens. Ottawa should only take care of national and international issues which are best managed at this level of government and on which we have common interest. The rest should be left to provinces. This means an end to all federal intrusions into provincial jurisdictions in education, housing, local infrastructures, daycare, dental care, and health care. Let every province manage its own provincial police, pensions, manpower training, or immigration selections, just like Quebec. Of course, we should reform the equalization program and reduce payments to put an end to the culture of dependency and encourage provinces to adopt policies that favor economic growth. So, what are your options? What are your options at the federal level if you want real change from the dysfunctional, centralized government in Ottawa? Yes, you can vote for the Conservative, but I'm sorry to disappoint some of you. But as much as you may want to get rid of the Liberals, voting for the Conservative will change absolutely nothing. I know what I'm talking about. I was a Conservative minister for 6 years. The Conservatives have no plan to solve Canada's structural problems. They don't even acknowledge that they exist. They have nothing to say about our imperial federal regime. They have nothing to say about the centralization of power in Ottawa. They have nothing to say about equalization payments. There is very little substantive differences between them and the Liberals, even under Pierre Poilievre. And even less so that Mark Carney has been getting rid of many of Trudeau's most controversial policies and has been stealing some ideas from the Conservatives. The Conservatives do politics by polling and are following the dominant economic trend. They court the voters in Ontario and in Quebec with mainstream centrist policies and take Western voters for granted. All they want is power, not transformative changes. Even when they win elections, they have no mandate for change. And they would inevitably govern to please Eastern Canada to get reelected like Harper did. Just tell me, what is the legacy of the Harper Conservative government? Did he reduce the equalization payment? No, he did the opposite and increased them to be more generous towards Eastern Canada. Did he reduce immigration levels? No, he did the opposite and increased it. Harper, we must admit, was a good manager of a big, fat, interventionist government in Ottawa. That's it. He has no legacy. A Poilievre government will do the same. No transformational reforms. We are the only party proposing a radical decentralization and ending imperial federalism. Canada is becoming more and more dysfunctional and centralized every year. And the separatist movement in Quebec and in Alberta are gaining traction. Although we do not share the ultimate goal of separatists to break up the country, their grievances are legitimate. This relentless push toward more centralization, fueled by both liberal and conservative support for imperial federalism, reinforces a stagnant status quo. Another way to bring about meaningful change may be to take advantage of the constitutional crisis that will follow a majority vote in favor of secession in a provincial referendum. To force changes, the People's Party will support the yes side in any future referendum in Quebec or Alberta. To break the grip of imperial federalism and pave the way for a last-ditch attempt at rebalancing our federation. Personally, I voted for the yes at the last referendum in Quebec in 1985 because I wanted the federal government to give more autonomy to Quebec by respecting our constitution. 49% of Quebecers voted yes, and after all the promises for real change, nothing happened. 13 years later, the federal government is violating provincial autonomy more than ever. The only way to save our country is to radically decentralize Ottawa and respect our constitution. As I said in the beginning of my speech, our federation is broken. The federal government keeps growing and does not respect the division of power in our constitution. We are losing our basic rights and freedoms at a rapid pace. If this trend does not reverse, we can all say goodbye to our prosperity and our way of life. Whether or not we have a conservative or liberal government in Ottawa, it won't make any difference. We need a peaceful revolution to save our country and restore our federation as it was conceived. We need structural reforms, not band-aid solutions like those proposed by these establishment political parties. We need committed, patriotic citizens who are ready to fight for what they believe in to start this revolution. I'm ready. Yes, I'm ready to fight for our country. Are you? Are you ready? Thank you.